Center court in Toronto was rocking. Philippine flags were everywhere, the chants for Eala were bouncing around the stadium, and for a moment it felt like the entire Filipino tennis community had shown up to witness another chapter in a dream run. But almost immediately, something looked off. Eala, who had been playing with explosive energy throughout her incredible winning streak, seemed just a little slower. Her first step wasn't as sharp. Her footwork lacked the usual pop. Shots that had been painting the lines all week were suddenly drifting wide, and the relentless physical intensity that had become part of her identity was missing. Then came the final point, and the scoreboard delivered the result her supporters had been hoping they wouldn't see. Belinda Bencic won 6-4, 6-0. Just like that, Eala's remarkable 8-match winning streak was over, and her Toronto run had come to a painful stop. But if you only look at the score, you miss the real story. Almost immediately after the match, attention turned back to the ankle issue Eala had suffered in her previous battle with Katie McNally. At first, it looked like something she might be able to manage. She received attention, taped the ankle, returned to play, later removed the tape, and somehow fought her way through the match. Her determination was impressive, and she never tried to hide behind the injury or use it as an excuse. But by the time she stepped onto center court against Bencic, it was clear that the problem had not completely disappeared. And against a player with Bencic's experience, even a tiny physical limitation can change everything. To really understand why this loss hurt so much, you have to look at what Eala had done before she ever arrived in Toronto. She was coming off the biggest title of her career at the Washington Open, where she defeated world numero 3 Jessica Pegula in an extraordinary final. That win pushed her confidence to a new level and extended a run in which she had already taken down multiple elite opponents. Suddenly, she wasn't being treated like an exciting young prospect anymore. She was becoming one of the fastest rising names on the WTA Tour, her ranking was climbing quickly, and opponents were beginning to prepare for her differently. Toronto only made the spotlight brighter. The Filipino community embraced her from the moment she arrived. Her matches became one of the biggest attractions of the tournament. Thousands of supporters showed up. Philippine flags filled the stands. Fans leaned over railings, phones in the air, screaming her name. Tournament officials noted the extraordinary demand surrounding her appearances, with thousands of tickets connected to the excitement around her matches. The atmosphere started to feel less like a normal early-round WTA match and more like a major center court event. Eala even talked about how emotional that support had become. One fan reportedly told her they wanted to be Filipino for the night. That kind of moment can lift an athlete, but it also shows how quickly expectations were growing. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore. Every match felt connected to a larger story, one involving a Filipino tennis community that had waited years to see one of its own compete at this level. But all of that emotion came with a physical cost. Eala had just gone through an exhausting stretch in Washington, including a final against Pegula that was disrupted by weather and stretched across multiple days. Then she traveled to Toronto, played Alicia Parks in a dramatic rematch, competed in doubles alongside Venus Williams, and returned to singles against McNally. She had played on 5 of 6 days, carried the emotional high of a breakthrough WTA 500 title, traveled, recovered, practiced, and then rolled her ankle. By the time Bencic stood across the net, the tank was running dangerously low. Bencic, a Tokyo Olympic gold medalist, former world numero 4, and one of the most experienced players on the biggest stages, knew exactly how to test that weakness. She had also won the National Bank Open back in 2015 as an 18-year-old, defeating 4 top 10 players along the way, including Serena Williams. This was not the kind of opponent who would miss an obvious physical limitation. From the opening games, Bencic made Eala move. Side to side. Corner to corner. Forward, backward, then into another change of direction. Normally, that is where Eala can be so dangerous. Her athleticism allows her to defend, recover, scramble back into position, and suddenly turn defense into offense. But this time, the movement wasn't the same. Her first step looked slower. Her recovery after wide balls was less explosive. Shots she had been reaching all week were getting past her. Benzik saw it and kept asking the same question, "Can you move?" Early in the first set, both players protected serve and settled into long, demanding rallies. Eala tried to establish her rhythm from the baseline, but the ankle appeared to be affecting her just enough to matter. Against an elite opponent, being a fraction of a second late is sometimes all it takes. Benzik pushed ahead 4-2. For a moment, it looked like the set could get away quickly. But Eala refused to fold. She dug in, raised her intensity, fought through the discomfort, and clawed her way back to 4-4. The crowd exploded. Philippine flags were waving again. The chants got louder. Supporters could feel another comeback building. After everything Eala had already survived in Washington and Toronto, people inside the stadium believed she might find another way. Benzik never panicked. She stayed composed, kept moving Eala around the court, found an opening in the ninth game, broke serve, and then closed out the set 6-4. The score was close, but the physical toll was not. Eala had spent a huge amount of energy just trying to get herself into position. Every long rally became a test. Every wide ball forced her to push off the injured ankle again. Every defensive scramble demanded more from a body that had already been stretched across one of the busiest periods of her young career. Then the second set began, and the match changed dramatically. Benzik took control almost immediately. She mixed pace, direction, and depth, constantly forcing Eala to adjust. Eala's shots lost some of their usual depth. Her forehand was no longer doing the same damage. Her recovery between points and between shots became increasingly difficult. The errors began to pile up. Benzik sensed the opening and never let up. Game after game disappeared from Eala's side of the scoreboard until the second set ended 6-0. In barely more than half an hour, what had started as a competitive battle had turned into a one-sided finish. The dream was over. The 8-match winning streak was gone. The hope of reaching the quarterfinals was gone. And inside the stadium, thousands of Filipino supporters were left stunned. They had watched Eala arrive in Canada with the biggest title of her career. They saw her beat Parks. They watched her survive McNally despite rolling her ankle. They watched her compete through fatigue. They believed another piece of history might be coming. Instead, they watched her reach the physical limit of what she could give. That is why this result cannot be separated from everything that came before it. A 6-4, 6-0 loss looks harsh on paper, but it does not erase Washington. It does not erase the 7-match stretch that had built so much momentum before this defeat. It does not erase her victory over Pegula, the ranking progress that pushed her toward the top 20, or the growing belief that she belongs with the best players in the world. There was also another interesting piece of context around the matchup. Eala had built an impressive record against left-handed opponents and had not lost to a lefty since 2024. That made the matchup even more intriguing. But on this day, matchups and streaks mattered less than the physical reality unfolding on court. After the match, Eala's body language told its own story. The confident smile fans had seen so often during her breakthrough run was replaced by exhaustion and disappointment. Still, she remained composed when she spoke to the media. The obvious question was, what happened? Eala acknowledged that the ankle problem from the McNally match had played a significant role. The pain had never fully disappeared. She had received treatment between matches, but the recovery window was simply too short. The issue affected the way she moved, the way she pushed off, and her ability to play the aggressive tennis that had carried her through Washington and into Toronto. She also gave Benzik credit for taking advantage of the situation and admitted she struggled to find her normal rhythm. And that matters. This was not simply a case of Eala suddenly forgetting how to play tennis. It wasn't a random collapse in form. It was the end result of a demanding stretch that included travel, weather delays, singles, doubles, emotional pressure, limited recovery, and then an ankle problem layered on top of all of it. At the professional level, an ankle does not have to be seriously damaged to cause major problems. Even a relatively minor issue can affect how a player plants the foot, rotates, accelerates, stops, changes direction, and recovers after a shot. Those differences may look tiny to someone watching from the stands. Against an Olympic champion, they become huge. Ben-Sik understood that. She didn't need to overpower Eala. She simply played smart, kept the pressure on, forced her to defend, and repeatedly tested the exact movement that was giving her trouble. Eventually, Eala reached the point where determination could no longer compensate for the physical limitation. For Filipino fans, that was difficult to watch. But there is another side to the story. Not long ago, simply making a deep run at a major WTA event would have been treated as a massive breakthrough for Eala. Now, people were disappointed because she did not reach the quarterfinals. That shift in expectations says a lot about how far she has already come. Her rise is changing what people expect from her. That brings a different kind of challenge. The next stage of Eala's development will not only be about hitting harder, serving better, or winning more matches. It will also be about learning how to manage a demanding schedule, recover between tournaments, protect her body, deal with the pressure of being a top-ranked player, and find ways to compete when she is not physically at 100%. Those lessons are not glamorous, but they are essential. The winning streak ended in Toronto, but the progress did not. She leaves this stretch with a WTA 500 title, wins over elite opponents, a major ranking breakthrough, experience against world-class players, and a level of belief that cannot be erased by one rough afternoon. The loss to Ben-Sik may have ended the Toronto dream, but it did not end the story. If anything, it revealed what comes next. Recover. Learn. Get healthy. Build the body for the grind that comes with competing near the top of the sport. And when the next tournament arrives, step back onto the court without the physical limitations that finally caught up with her in Toronto.